Hey, welcome everybody. This is Chief Meteorologist Brad Petovich. You're tuned in to live weather impact tonight on this Thursday, September 11th. Just got back from the National Weather Association annual conference. We're going to be talking about that tonight with Tim. A lot of topics to cover. The weather is actually probably the least of our topics because it's been amazing. We have had such a great stretch of weather, and that's become a story because even though the weather's great, haven't had a lot of rain, and that's starting to be a concern I have as we get later into the fall. But let's start with the views out there because it is gorgeous across the area. We'll take our quad view here from Monroe to Lake Norman to Dallas to Charlotte. It is just gorgeous. Now, Monroe's got a few more clouds because eastern North Carolina, there are a few clouds and even a few showers from a few spots out there. So definitely something we'll keep an eye on. If you're in eastern part of the state, you could see the clouds there. Basically from the coastal plain out towards the Outer Banks. That's an area that we've had a few showers, and that is an interesting feature. If we're going to see any moisture over the next, I'd say 7 to 10 days, it's likely going to be some kind of low pressure system that tries to develop along the coast and back up. There's no signs of it right now, but because the upper level pattern, the steering currents, if you will, really aren't moving anything at us, this would have to kind of meander back to the west. So this is an area to watch. Nothing that is imminent right now, but it's certainly some potential there that we could see maybe a low pressure system develop over the coming days, and that would be something that could bring us some rain maybe next week. But right now, just nothing in sight. Let's start with the temperatures because here we are at 6:32 as we're doing this live. Low 80s, upper 70s, very pleasant. I'd call it kind of warm for this time of year. We got to 84, which is our average high. But here's the key part. The dew points, we're team dew point here. We love the low 50s, upper 40s. It feels great. So when you have dry air in place, one of the unique things about dry air, it's got we get big diurnal swings, and that's a weird word. We use it quite a bit, but it actually has a technical term. Diurnal means from day to night, okay? So you go from day to night. It's warm during the day, cool at night. It's kind of a desert climate where you get really hot during the day and kind of cool at night, and that's going to be the trend the next couple of days. So the average low is actually in the low 60s. We're probably going to be more in the upper 50s like we were this morning. We've had 4 consecutive mornings in the 50s, and not yesterday morning, but the morning before on the 9th, we actually had a touch of frost in the mountains. That's how cool it got with that dry air. Now tomorrow, after the sun comes up, temperatures warm right back up, and we see temperatures jump up into the low and mid 80s. And again, the high today was 84. I think we'll be in the same ballpark. Now, Thursday's drought monitor day. When we do have dry conditions, every Thursday we get an update to the drought monitor. The drought monitor, by the way, I get asked a lot about the drought monitor. It's not specifically rain, and that seems weird to say. It's impacts. So even if we're above average for rain or below average for rain, if the lack of rainfall starts to have impacts, and that means wildfire, stream flow, agricultural, water restrictions, you'll see the drought monitor start to go up, meaning there's some issues. And even if for the year we could be above average for rainfall, you could be in a drought because it hasn't rained in the last couple of weeks. Rainfall is about consistency. It's not about amounts because you can't really keep the rain that fell several months ago. You need to always have a little bit of rain coming. And because of all the rain we saw in early August, people think we've got plenty. Problem is it hasn't really rained since then. So abnormally dry conditions are starting to develop. And because it's been cool, it hasn't really accelerated too badly. If it was hot and dry, we'd probably see drought conditions already in many locations. And when you look at the long-range forecast here, and this is a 68-hour, almost a 3-day forecast, try to find some rain. Not a lot out there, but you see the low pressure we talked about on the coast possibly trying to develop. That's something we'll keep a close eye on, but right now, I don't think we're going to see much out of it. In fact, the 7-day rainfall forecast is pretty much close to zero. That's about as dry as you're going to get around here over a 7-day period. When 20% is the best you can do, you know it's dry, and that's kind of what we're seeing for early next week with dry conditions. But the benefit of this is the dew points never really go up, so at least it stays comfortable. And these are kind of correlated. You need some dew point air, some higher dew point air to get in here to kind of give us a chance of some rainfall. And right now, just not seeing a lot of that heading our way. Quick update on the tropics. Yesterday, we had the peak of the hurricane season. It's the exact peak day is September 10th, so we're right in the wheelhouse. And right now, nothing imminent, but a tropical wave is coming off the coast of Africa. And like last year at this point, when we were in a lull, we started to see things get active about mid-September, and then they stayed incredibly active through the end of October. So we are not out of the woods yet, but something we'll keep a close eye. And I'll talk to Tim about this as well. We'll talk a little bit about things possibly getting active out there over the coming weeks. But right now, just nothing to worry about. Temperature-wise, yeah, it's going to be pretty warm here over the next couple of days. A heat dome builds in the middle of the country. We're kind of on the edge of it. We're not directly under it, but we are going to see some pretty warm conditions. And you'll see in the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, that's the 17th through the 21st. So this is going into next week, above average temperatures. Now, this is a two-part issue here. One, it's going to be warm, but also the average high is starting to go down as we get later into fall. So a warm pattern moving in at the same time that the average high is dropping means the departure there starts to get a little higher. So the chance of below average temperatures is really increasing because of this. So I would expect low 80s is about average for into next week. Well, we expect mid to upper 80s, possibly close to 90. And by the way, we have not hit 90 yet since the 17th of August. We had 289s this month, but we have not hit 90. So we're still on track to not have another 90 before the end of the year. So let's go to the weekend forecast quickly. We'll show you that Saturday looks very comfortable, upper 50s to near 60 in the morning. Afternoon highs are going to be climbing up into the low, possibly the mid 80s. As we go into Sunday, starts to get a little warmer, mid 80s, probably a touch more humidity. And when I mean humidity, 60 degree dew point, maybe low 60s. Let's look at the 7 day forecast, and you'll see pretty warm for Sunday, Monday, mid 80s. Average high is about 83 by then. Next week, the only rain chance I have is 20%. 20%. All I could muster there for Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll go 10 days into the future and give you a good long look at that. Notice the heat that really starts to build late next week, and that's that 17th through 21st time frame we talked about in the long range. A couple of those days, especially Thursday, Friday, Saturday, next weekend, could be mid to upper 80s. Close to 90, we might get close. I don't want to jinx it. We got close already a couple times this month at 89, but right now it looks like going into Friday of next week, possibly Saturday, we could see upper 80s, close to 90 degrees. But also notice no significant rain chances in that 10-day forecast. So that is a subject that Tim and I will be talking about coming up after the break. Are we going to see a fall drought develop, flash drought, which could be problematic for a couple of reasons. One being that we are now a year removed from Helene, and we have a lot of wood that fell a year ago and has had a whole year to season or dry out. So that is something the U.S. Forest Service has been concerned about, and the North Carolina Forest Service as well, that the year from Helene was the time to watch for potential fire danger. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the National Weather Association Conference. We'll talk about some weather history today that also coincides with the horrible tragedy of 9/11. That's all coming up right after the break. All right, welcome back. Well, we're having some technical difficulties with Tim out of Greensboro. We can see his graphics, we just can't see his camera. So we're going to effort that with Tim to try to get him up here. But we'll go on to what we were going to talk about with Tim. And I'll get more into the drought situation because I briefly mentioned it in my local forecast. I know Tim mentioned this as well. One of the concerns that we're starting to see kind of crop up here is really dry conditions. And if you're trying to overseed your lawn or you're trying to keep that summer garden going and landscaping, you're probably very well aware of the fact that it has been bone dry. And every Thursday, we get what's called the drought monitor. It comes out every Thursday. The data runs Tuesday to Tuesday. Last week was the first time, no, it was 2 weeks ago, was the first time in about a month that we actually had abnormally dry conditions show up. And it's expanded again. So this week we're seeing those dry conditions start to expand, especially in eastern North Carolina, the low country of South Carolina, the areas around the PD, and then stretching into the mountains and parts of the northern Piedmont going up into Virginia. Now normally this is not a big deal. Abnormally dry conditions happen. But one of the concerns we do have is because I mentioned coming into the break that we've been a year removed from Helene. There's still a lot of down timber in western North Carolina. And one of the concerns was that once that wood had time to dry out, and if you've ever used firewood, you know what seasoned wood is, right? Usually it's been cut, it's been stacked, and it's been sitting for at least a season or two to dry out. And now that's what we've had since Helene. So as we get into the fall and we get into the second fire season, we have one fire season in the spring, one in the fall. And the reason that those two fire seasons exist is that the vegetation starts to go dormant or dry out, and it's also the windy time of year. So as we get later in the fall and the vegetation starts to go dormant, what I mean by that is we lose the greenery, right? Things start to just go dormant. Trees lose their leaves, grasses dry out, everything dries out, and you get into the windy season. So this will be a concern and something to monitor. We're not to that level yet. I don't want you guys to worry about it yet, but it's just something to keep a close eye on, and it's always a good idea to prepare just in case. So if you live in that urban interface with the wildlife interface there, you got to be careful. Make sure your property has any kind of fire fuels taken away from your home. One of the biggest things we see in wildfire risks to properties is pine needles and debris in gutters. Sparks and stuff like that get on a roof and they fall into a gutter, and that's where fire starts. So that'll be something we'll watch. We'll also keep an eye on how this is going to impact fall color. And I was going to talk with Tim about this as well. This isn't necessarily a bad thing for fall color because dry, sunny, warm days and crisp, cool nights are exactly what you need for vivid fall color. And I thought I'd give you an update on the average peak time. Now, when I say the average peak time, this is when typically peak color occurs. And by elevation, it's temperature dependent. This is why the color changes quicker in the higher elevations in the mountains than it does in the Piedmont. So where it's been cooler longer, and I think it was Tuesday morning, we had our first touch of frost in parts of the mountains. So the highest elevations would see peak color around October 7th, which means in the next couple of weeks, we're going to start to see color in the highest elevations in the North Carolina mountains. Now, as we get later into October, we start to see it drop down to around 4,000 to 5,000 feet. And then we start to get it down to about 3,500 feet about mid to late month. Around Halloween, you're down around 2,500 feet. And for the Charlotte area, the Piedmont, including the Triad, areas down into the Charlotte Metrolina area, typically our peak color is going to be usually that week before Thanksgiving, maybe 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. But we will have color here by the end of October. I know because every time we have trick-or-treating and Halloween, kids are usually walking through leaves in my yard. So there's always going to be leaves coming down. But this is peak color, by the way, which kind of gives you an idea on when we're going to see it. I'll quickly show you the overall leaf color outlook because this is going to be, I think I got my map. I got to find my fall color map here. Thought I had it pulled up for you. But fall color, across the region is going to start to show up, especially by the end of September, and that's usually when we start to see it show up in the mountains, and like Beach, Sugar Mountain, those areas we'll start to see it as well. So we got our technical difficulties kind of worked out. Looks like Tim is there. Tim, welcome. Oh, can we hear you? We don't have your audio. So we can see you. So we've gotten victory number one, but we can't hear you yet. So we'll try to get your audio come up. But as Tim kind of works in that, what we're talking about, Tim, was fall color. And, we should be in the next coming weeks start to see some of our first color, especially above, let's say, 4,000 feet. Can you talk, Tim? See if we can hear you. No audio. I wish we had closed captioning. I would just Tim right now is telling everybody how much he loves Ohio State football. No, we know he's a Penn State guy. But yeah, we'll try to work on his audio there. But yeah, for folks excited for fall, which I am, I love fall color. This really is kind of the beginning of the color season. You get into mid to late September is when you start to see it above 35,000, maybe, or 3,500 feet, around 4,000 feet, you should start to see some of this color. And so this is kind of the average peak color for the map. And you could see for the Piedmont, we got to wait till November. But if you go up into the mountains, you'll see the ridge tops kind of stick out. Those areas in purple, those are the ones you're looking for. If you want the earliest color possible, you got to go to the tallest mountain. So that's the Black Mountains. That's Dan Cloud's Mount Mitchell. That's going to include areas up there towards, hey, we can hear you now, Sugar, Beach Mountain, Road Mountain, those areas. Those are the areas that we start to see some of the first color change. And that should be happening, Tim, I think, in the next couple of weeks, especially since I saw you kind of like that tweet from the mountains. I think it was Tuesday morning. You had some of their first frost of the season up there.
It was kind of interesting. They were actually in the 30s for a long time, right? Like Boone, I think, was in the 30s, maybe a couple mornings in a row. They had record low temperatures for a good chunk of that time. So like you were saying, this is probably going to really activate and kind of jumpstart that fall color a little bit more. And I've been kind of messaging back with, our buddy who runs the Parkway Colors site. And I'll pop this up for you. Wait, hold on. There you go. Here's a nice photo. So this is from that Graveyard Fields area.
Yep.
And there's some really nice color that's already starting to pop up a little bit.
Yeah. And that is one of those spots that always changes first. So that is a great spot. That's a good sign that we are probably going to see an early start because, was this today or yesterday, Tim? Do you know?
So he posted it, I believe, about 2 days ago. And he mentioned, too, that this is actually not ahead of schedule. This is kind of normal for them.
Okay.
In that spot.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is one of those typical cool spots. And so, yeah, that is nice to see. And that kind of puts you in the spirit. People start planning their trips up there. And it's always elevation dependent because there's not a specific time for each location. The mountains vary by elevation. So if you're planning a trip up there, I think any time in October, Tim, is a good time. Any weekend in October, you're going to see something up there depending on where you're at.
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of the sweet spot is like mid-October, maybe. Yep. That second week is usually a good. And like we tell people, if you don't like what you're seeing in that one spot that you're at, we'll go higher or lower because it'll be better somewhere.
Yeah, and then like you move your way down to the Piedmont in November, like Uwharrie and those areas, they can have color late into November sometimes. So you can actually kind of stretch out your fall color season if you want to just travel around the Western Carolinas and go to different elevations. You can see color pretty much every weekend, starting from late September all the way into November. So it's a great time of year. Now, Tim, I talked about this, and I saw you talk about it as well. We're starting to get pretty dry around here. We could use some rain, and I saw you show that graphic in your forecast about maybe a wet pattern trying to set up, but there's a little uncertainty on this coastal low next week. Maybe we get some moisture, maybe we don't. It's kind of an interesting setup.
Yeah, I'm wondering what you think about this too, because it's only popped up on pretty much one model so far.
Yeah.
For those watching, we use a various number of models. There are a couple of main ones would be the American model, the GFS, and then the European model, which is another really great one. And the Euro right now is really liking this idea of maybe a wet couple of days for next week. And kind of the idea behind it would be that you'd have a pretty stout high pressure just to the north of us. And then we'd be on kind of the bottom edge of that ridge. And with low pressure kind of helping to funnel in some Atlantic air, you can sometimes get some pretty good rain out of that.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I think I'd like to see some more consistency.
Yeah, I agree with you. The euro is kind of going crazy with this a little bit, and it is a pattern we do see this time of year. So it's not out of left
Yeah.
field, but you're right. There's not a lot of consistency in the other guidance, and it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing too, because like I was showing with the drought monitor, eastern part of the Carolinas pretty dry, and even here in the Piedmont, it's been since early August where we've had any widespread good rain.
Yeah, it's true. It's been a little while. We had, I guess, a couple Saturdays ago where we had that decent rainfall, but it's basically been dry since then.
Yeah. So, Tim, I wanted to talk a little about where I was the last week. I got to go down to the National Weather Association annual conference. It was kind of a big one, Tim. It was the 50th anniversary of the organization, which was kind of cool. And it was great to go down. There were a lot of broadcasters down there, a lot of emergency managers. Lacking this year, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of weather service employees. They haven't got their travel budgets approved. But there was some optimism among some of the NOAA representatives there that Dr. Neil Jacobs is going to open up travel and allow them to come more to these conferences. So maybe going forward, we'll see more of them in the future. But there was only 6 weather service employees on their own dime that came. So
Wow.
yeah, a lot of Helene talk at the conference, a lot of AI, and a lot of communication talk. I would say those were the 3 things that we talked the most about. And AI in particular was interesting, as we know in broadcasting, there's some weird things about AI and avatars and stuff. But there was a lot of AI talk of forecasting techniques, Tim. And one of the cool things was that I think for everybody out who's not familiar, AI seems new, but in the weather field, machine learning's been a big part of modeling for a while now. And a lot of the talk was that machine learning would be great, but they still need more data. So there's some excitement about future mesonets and satellite and radar data that can feed these machine learning models to make them better and create better forecasts. So that was a big topic. And then Helene, there were some great talks on Helene and the recovery and the communication of Helene in the western part of the state. And we're coming up with an anniversary. So it was a very timely topic this year.
Yeah, and we were happy to I can't remember which day it was, maybe it was Monday or Tuesday. We were happy to air your award that you got presented with as well, which is a huge honor and
Yeah.
well deserved. And that must have been kind of a cool experience for you.
Yeah, the coolest thing about it was, and we're going to talk to Jared. He works over in Asheville. He actually gave me a hug after my presentation because he was really appreciative of all he did. And he was telling me, he's like, I didn't know all the stuff that people were doing because he had no access to communication or media in general. So he didn't even know where some of the helpers were coming from. And so he was just very appreciative of all the help that came across the state. And that's what I reflected on from that time last year, Tim, was it was a horrible situation, but I just remember the outpouring of help that the community had. Probably the best thing I've ever been a part of was just the Operation Airdrop and people showing up at my house with stuff to take up there. So there's always tragedies like that, but you always get that, that glimmer of hope and humanity that something great could come from it. And there really was in the aftermath of Helene last year.
Yeah, for sure. And so many of those memories coming back, this time of year, like we talked about, September is just boom, boom, boom down the list from Katrina to Helene coming up soon. We were just making up a list the other day of we've got Florence coming up, we've got Michael coming up, we've got Matthew, then we have Hazel, Floyd. They're all this time of year in this part of the country, it seems.
Yeah, and today's another big anniversary. It's an unfortunate tragedy is 9/11. Which most people will remember for the horrible events that happened in Pennsylvania, New York, and D.C. But, Tim, there's a little bit of weather history tied to this date as well, and it's kind of the forgotten hurricane, if you will. Hurricane Aaron occurred on this date, on the same time frame. So, Jeb, can you take my laptop? Tim, this is a satellite image of Hurricane Aaron on 9/11 in 2001. And I'm going to zoom in on New York City because what's stunning about this, you see the Hurricane Aaron off the coast there. We zoom into New York City and you can actually see the smoke plumes from the Twin Towers. And I don't think many people remember this Aaron at all. There was some kind of remembrance with this past Aaron this year, but people had forgotten that there was a huge hurricane off the coast when this horrible event was happening.
For sure. And it wasn't that memorable because it didn't, and I'm glad you're bringing up the path here because we can
Yes.
take a look at it. In
Those
my
are all
brain,
the
I had
Aarons.
thought that it was Yeah, it's not that similar to the one that we just went through because it actually kind of came around the other side of Bermuda
Yep.
and then slowed down and kind of took like a hard right turn and never really got close enough to threaten anybody.
Yeah, so what I pulled up here are all the Aaron named storms, because for people who don't know, the names get recycled every 6 years unless they get retired. So there was an Aaron in, what was that, 1999, 1989, the same year that we had Hugo, 1995, 2001, 2007, 2013, 2019, and obviously 2021 or 2001 again, and then last year, this year I should say 2025, which took almost a similar path. And I think I actually, at one point I had it pulled up, but I lost it. But yeah, so on this date we had a hurricane off the East Coast, Aaron, as well, that coincide exactly with the horrible holiday, or I should say remembrance, I should say, of that tragedy back on this date. And I don't think people remember that one until they see that satellite image. And I think a lot of folks didn't remember it until they saw the Aaron this year, which took almost a similar track.
For sure, but definitely, part of people's memory, and all of us have a memory of that day and of those moments and those hours. If you lived in the Northeast, you had a beautiful day of weather. I remember I was going to high school at the time, upstate New York, but it was one of those cool, crisp fall mornings, or kind of one of the first of those of the season that year. And it was blue sky, blue sky, blue sky, and just a really beautiful day. A lot of people remember the weather.
Yeah.
In whatever the case may be, whatever type of life event they're going through, usually the weather is tied to memory, and that was the case with this too.
Yeah, when you watch some of the documentaries and some of the video, that's like one of the first things you see, the wake up radio signal in the morning, or on the Today Show, saying it's a beautiful day, waking up, it's crystal clear. And part of that was because the hurricane was off the coast. The counterclockwise flow around the hurricane was bringing this north dry, cool air into New England and most of the East Coast. So it was a beautiful start. So unfortunate tragedy, but a little bit of weather history tied to that as well. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for coming in, even though we had a little technical difficulty. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Stay tuned for more coverage coming up right here on WCNC Plus.